I think I want to do something else. But a lot of them do stay on in different capacities. And then
I would bet. I think that, if you think of the person and the personality of the person that you're choosing that
yes.
Wants to give back, wants to serve, has spent years gaining these skills and, gets into a nonprofit and they can see that they're bringing a level of sophistication, a level of organization, a level of, if you call it capacity building, and that it's making a difference for the nonprofit to be able to fulfill its mission. And they can see that what they're doing makes a difference, that they probably got pretty attached to it and want to find a way to stay involved beyond their, their one fellowship year. We get attached.
For some of them, it's a life-changing experience. They will talk very passionately about the impact that it's had on their lives. You're talking about people who, in many cases, have had successful careers. Again, sometimes in government, sometimes even people coming out of other nonprofits. But if you take someone like from Intel, I remember one fellow talking about how he led a team of 750 people on one project, and then he goes to work for an environmental organization, which is vastly smaller than that, less than a tenth that size. And he could see on a day-to-day basis the impact of his work in that organization, and it was enormously fulfilling for him.
Yes.
You hear those stories from the fellows who have had really good fellowships. That in that sense, it becomes just enormously.
I would bet those stories are just extremely satisfying. If you have others you wanted to share, we'd love to hear a few success stories. If you've got some you could share.
Well, I can think. I mentioned this one fellow who went to work for an environmental organization in the Portland area. There's I'm thinking of another fellow, a woman who actually helped manage construction of huge fabrication plants for Intel, who spent the fellowship as a project manager, construction manager for Friends of the Children in the Portland area.
Oh, wow.
Which was expanding into the eastern side of Portland and building a physical facility out there. So you have someone with this incredible depth of experience in construction management who came into this organization working with, that's direct service, was working with children and providing counselors and other services for these kids from the time they're in elementary school through high school, and they're building a physical facility, and she's overseeing that and developing corporate partnerships with the organization. Both the organization and the fellow just thought it was tremendously valuable, and in fact, she was there for the year, but the project took longer than that, so she's staying on with them to oversee that project further through to its.
Sure, she's a professional. That's what professionals do.
That's exactly right. And, another person, actually, I'm thinking, I believe she came from HP, who worked with Gateway to College, putting in, helping to develop metrics for their organization, metrics of performance. It's a national organization that helps kids get into college, and she was training their staff. She was developing financial management systems. She was interacting with their board of directors, fairly high-level position. And again, both the organization and the fellow had a tremendously enriching experience doing that. We have fellows at Virginia Garcia Medical Health Centers on the western side of the city, largely Latino population, very innovative and progressive healthcare organization, coming in as project managers. As that organization gears up for an increase in the Medicare population, they need process improvement and program improvement, and these fellows are coming in and helping them adapt to changes in the healthcare industry, improve their medical records processes, improve their workflow processes so they can handle more patients coming in.
This is just fabulous. So, clearly there's a broad variety of projects that Encore Fellows get involved with, from
Yes.
metrics to project management. I would imagine they even do some coaching with executive directors and,
Yes. Yeah.
Probably even help them figure out approaches of how to work with their boards and how to work with funders. And,
Yes.
as I say, I think people that are coming from the companies you're talking about, Intel and HP, and, they get such fabulous training experience, in their work, and to be successful at that, and then probably bring it forth to some of these organizations that maybe have never dealt with that level before.
Yeah, I think that's right. And we certainly get applicants, not just from those big corporations, but people who have had all kinds of careers in business. They may have even been entrepreneurs and grown businesses or worked for smaller businesses. So they come from all kinds of places. One who's been a fellow for about 2 months now, I think, had been in marketing in business, but if I remember correctly, then transitioned into teaching, and she was with the Portland Public Schools for a while, 15 years, and applied for fellowship, and she's now connected with a nonprofit in Portland as part of a national organization called Playworks that works with schools to develop essentially programs during recess to deal with what happens with kids and resource. And she is out there developing sort of essentially like a business development position in a way. She tries to find more schools who would like to participate in this program. So she's actually
fantastic.
Researching them and helping them expand the market that they serve, so to speak. So come from everywhere.
Steve, you talked about you're the matchmaker, and we talked some about how the Encore Fellows get chosen and who you're looking for. But how about the projects? How do projects come to you, and how do you choose to take on a project,
Sure.
as with the Encore Fellow program?
Well, that goes to the part of the, if you will, matchmaking process where I'm always looking for nonprofits who could benefit from having a fellow. I mean, fellows don't replace full-time employees. They tend to sort of snap in. There are two questions that I typically ask a work host who comes to me saying, they have an interest in hosting a fellow. And one question is, I'll say, if you have a strategic plan, and not all of them do, if you have a strategic is there an area of that plan that you're lagging in performance because you don't have the skills you need to execute on that part of your strategic plan? And if the executive director says, oh, yeah, we really intended to do this with our IT system or do that with our human resource management, that helps define a fellowship position. Or the second question I ask is, when you as an executive director go home, what are you losing sleep over? What is the aspect of your organization's performance that if you only had someone who, you're able to do what you're doing, you're delivering the service day to day, you're doing the things you're trying to do, but you could run a better ship if you could just address this, that, or the other problem. That could be an HR problem. It could be a marketing problem. It could be an IT problem, whatever it is. That's the second way to help define fellowship. If the executive director or whoever I'm talking with can answer those questions, we typically can flesh out a project that would be suitable for a fellow. Well,
that's great. So are there any? I suppose your question, your baseline, your threshold question is, do you have a strategic plan?
Yeah.
I assume if they don't have a strategic plan, it's hard for Encores to work with them. Is that kind of a starting spot?
I'll say the answer to that would be sort of a qualified yes, because we do have fellows who come into the organization, into the fellowship with expertise in both strategic planning and organizational development. So if the nonprofit doesn't have a strategic plan, or it's not well articulated, and they and their board are ready to create one, that's a potential match with a fellow who has the expertise to help them either develop or refine. But if the organization doesn't have a strategic plan, it is a bit of a red flag, because you sort of ask yourself, the fellows, being the kind of experienced people that they are, one of the things that many fellows bring to an organization is structure, policies, and procedures. I mean, they've worked in organizations. They know organizational arrangements that work and don't work. And one of the assets that many fellows bring is, how to put structure in place.
Yes.
Not all organizations are ready for that.
Right.
And they're too young. They haven't gotten to the stage where they need someone to come in and help put that structure in place. And
yeah. I was just wondering if there's any nonprofits that don't qualify. Maybe if they don't have a clear project, or they don't have a strategic plan, or they're not well enough organized. But I don't know. Does that happen?
I think that's right. I mean, I can't say in my 8, 10, 11 months in this position that I think I have worked with. How should I put this? If I think a nonprofit is questionable as a host, I may invest more time up front with staff in trying to define and articulate the task and the statement of work for the fellow. So, the national office says that the sweet spot for a work host, one indicator, is one that has a budget between $1 million and $5 million, because they're kind of large enough, mature enough to be able to accept this experienced person in as a staff person. They're not so big that this fellow is going to get lost in another big organization. But have we placed fellows at large nonprofits? Yes. And have we placed them at considerably smaller ones? Yes. But we put more time into creating a successful match up front, defining the project, who will the fellow report to, who's going to be their go-to person inside this organization, which can be, sometimes quite small. It could be 4, 5, 6 people. Who are they going to work with? How are they going to get the information they need? So we put more time into designing the fellowship. My client is, as I like to think of it, my client is the match. I want a successful match. I want to help
of course.
transition. I want to help the nonprofit expand its capacity. But I want both parties to feel at the end of that fellowship that it goes the full term, and both parties feel like this was a very valuable experience for both of them. Right.
You got the appropriate person in the appropriate slot, and they really made a difference in the nonprofit. I can see how you would want to work with ones that are of a somewhat larger size, because, as you said, the fellow has to have somebody to work with. If they're too little, the work that needs to be done at the nonprofit is quite hands-on, and your fellows are designed to guide and coach and teach and model and not type up minutes and get out meeting notices. It's totally different.
That's exactly right. And the concern, actually, if you put a fellow, you have to get just the right fellow with just the right skills and personality to put them into a relatively new and, a new nonprofit is like a new entrepreneurial business. And it's, as you just said, it's like an all hands on deck. We have all these things to do to get this thing running. Yeah.
Well, this is so interesting. It's so interesting to me. I think it's a great idea. And, Steve, you've always served as an academic and an educator. And are you finding this work really different for you? And, is it fulfilling for you? Are you just having a wonderful time?
It is different in some ways, but yes, it is. I am finding it fulfilling, and I am actually having a good time I told the executive director here that I gave myself sort of 3 months to try and figure, when I started,